Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy Simon with 3D Universe, and welcome to another episode of 3D Universe Untethered. This is our 8th episode today, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us. Today's guest is Vic Chaney, who I will introduce momentarily. We also, of course, have Jen Owen, my co-host, as usual, here with me today, and most of you know her by now. Vic is one of the people that responded when we reached out to our customers to sort of get some information about how they've been using their 3D printers and starting to get some ideas for projects going, and share that with some of our other customers to inspire them. And when Vic responded back to us and shared some of the projects he'd been doing, we just knew he was somebody that we had to have on this program, because he's come up with so many creative and inspiring projects that I certainly hadn't seen before. So I'm thrilled that we can sit down and talk with Vic about some of that work today. So a couple of logistics, and then we'll get into some more of Vic's background. Today, as I said, is our 8th episode, and you'll be able to find the recording for this and the other episodes that we've done on our website. So the easiest way to find that is to head over to our blog at 3duniverse.org, click on the 3D Universe Untethered graphic in the upper left, and then you can get to a page where you can see all the past recordings as well as upcoming episodes. So, as I said, today's special guest is Vic Chaney, and Vic enjoys making all kinds of things. He loves animated artworks, many of which include electronics, microcontrollers, and animatronics. He has his undergraduate degree in physics, and he went on actually to become a dentist. He's been using 3D printing for about 5 years now. The 3D printer is so useful in creating parts for his projects. He makes whimsical artwork, things for his office, and practical gadgets for his home. His website shows many of his creations. He has published how-to articles in Nuts and Bolts magazine, as well as for Instructables.com, and has displayed some of his creations at maker fairs and at the California State Fair Fine Arts exhibits. So again, so thrilled to have you with us. Welcome, Vic.
Thank you.
So Jen, you want to get us started here?
Yeah. I did a blog on your work previously, and about your art, and you shared that you've been making things since you were about 3 years old. Can you tell us a bit about some of the materials and things you created over the years before you jumped into 3D printing?
Well, I started with cardboard and paper and tape and scissors when I was a little kid, and got a little bit of woodworking and metalworking in junior high school in the 7th grade, and learned to work with those things, and got some good beginning woodworking tools when I was 11 years old, and so I started making things out of wood. And somewhere along the line, I decided I wanted to be able to do some metalworking, so I got some welding equipment, and went through several different kinds of welding equipment so I could do metal. And I get an idea to make something, and sometimes it requires metal and wood and plastic, and so and dentistry has given me some tools as well. I can solder small stainless steel things. I can cast things out of gold or brass, or bronze or silver, and so sometimes I'll have a little cast piece of brass or in there, and I'll have some woodworking and some plastic working, and a lot of different things. So I get an idea of what I want to make, and it's the project that determines what skills I use to be able to make them.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
And I
Another
love
thing that,
electronics, and so that can factor in. And I like that electronics allows me to make things move, and with servo motors, stepper motors, linear actuators, and I love lights. I love Jen's background there with the lights. I love lights. LEDs are just wonderful things to play with. And the 3D printer enables me to imagine something and make it from my imagination. I don't have to worry so much about machining something that might be hard to machine. I can just draw it on the computer and print it. And if it doesn't print just right, sometimes they make a few changes and print it again. Almost always takes 3 tries to get anything right. sometimes a lot more than 3 tries, sometimes just 1 try on some really simple things. But and I'm a perfectionist, so maybe the first try I could call it good enough, but I usually don't, and say I could make this better and this better, and then I can just go back in and edit my design and then print another one. And if it takes 12 hours to print it, well, that's okay. I just started going, and the next day it's done, and I look at it then.
Yeah.
Right. Very nice. Another thing that came up during that interview for that blog article is you shared with us that you never sell your artwork, that you consider this to be a passion project. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I have had people say you could make these and sell them of something, and say I have a good job. I have a great job. I love my job. It's very interesting and it's very rewarding. And now I'm partly retired. I got more time to mess with my 3D printer and stuff. But I don't want to. I don't need to make money now. Everybody would love to be rich, and I'd love to be rich, and I'm not rich. But if you live within your means, you know, I am rich. I got a car and I got a house. That's pretty darn cool. You know,
Right.
not everybody's got a car and a house. You know, so I am rich. In what I really need, and I got a computer and a 3D printer. I mean, how good is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's great. So then, in terms of the 3D printing, you've been doing this for a long time, obviously, your artwork in general. At what point did you start to look at a 3D printer and how that could be useful to you? And when did you decide to take the leap and get a 3D printer for yourself?
Well, I love making things, and as soon as I saw 3D printers, I said, I need one of those. I need one of those, and I thought for a while, well, I'd wait till the technology got a little better. And I know, look what's happened to computer printing pictures on paper. And we started, my first computer had a dot matrix printer that did graphics terrible, and now we can print beautiful color pictures. And I said 3D printers are where the dot matrix printers were, so I should wait. And then it got to a certain point. I said, if I wait, I'm missing out on all the things that I could do, and I missed learning it. So I decided to get one anyway, even though I knew it would, and they have gotten a lot better. I realized, although the one I have works, I can print up a storm with it, but
Yeah.
they've gotten even better. But I'm glad I didn't wait because getting it then meant I could play with it a lot. And now that they have better ones, I've got a much better handle on the 3D design and
Yep.
and making and working. I like to work with ABS, which I understand is a bit fussier than PLA,
That's
but
right.
it does very nice things. So that's,
It does.
so I like that.
Yeah, and so you've got that whole workflow down now, because even if you upgrade and get new printers, the workflow will be pretty much the same.
And yeah, and there's tricks to ABS, but I think I found a lot of them. And thank goodness there's all kinds of stuff online. There's lots of resources.
Right.
And your blogs and videos are I think, great resources. It's nice to be able to have all these things that we can learn from and learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And from our own mistakes. I make plenty of my own. The experience is the worst teacher. You get the test first, then you get the lesson.
Did you have a specific project in mind when you purchased your first 3D printer?
No, I said I'm going to get this thing and I'm going to figure out. I'm going to make something. I don't know what I'm going to make, but I'm going to make something. So my very first thing was a little stand that snaps onto the bottom of a shaving cream can so that the thing doesn't rust out and leave rust stains on my counter and cause a discoloration of the counter, because then the air can get underneath it. And it's a stupid, simple little thing, but I got to print something. So I did that. But then the ideas started to come to me. When you have this tool that does all kinds of things, you wouldn't think of making some things before because there's no way you could even make it. So why would you think of it? And then I realized I had this tool that will allow me to make all kinds of things that I can imagine. And so then the ideas, the printer came first, then the ideas started coming after that.
Oh, cool.
But I've always liked making things. anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, I completely know what you mean. Having that tool just gives you so many ideas of what you can start to do with it. And which 3D printer or 3D printers have you used specifically? Like which different types of printers have you had, and what do you have right now that you're using?
I only have one. I got an Ultimaker 2, and then I upgraded it to a 2 Plus.
Okay, yeah.
And they made some nice improvements in the heater and some other things in the 2 Plus, and I like that really well. But of course, now I see these newer ones coming out, and it makes me start drooling and think, well, that would be nice too, you know. So I'm thinking about it, you know, in 5 years, okay, maybe it's time to think about, you know, the dual extrusion concept and the water soluble support material looks really nice.
Opens up a lot of other options.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Your musical laser rainbow machine is absolutely beautiful. It looks like there are a lot of parts that were 3D printed in order to make it work. Can you share a bit about which components you had to 3D print and how you would have had to make them without access to a 3D printer?
Sure. Well, the laser rainbow machine takes 7 lasers that are different colors, and takes music and divides it into 7 different musical bands, and then controls the lasers. And there's 2 sets of 3 lasers, a red, green, and blue, that when you combine those, then you get all the other colors of the rainbow as well.
Mhm.
So I have 2 beams that are combining red, green, and blue. So I have a green laser comes out, and I have to be able to aim that green laser where I want it. And then I have a filter that passes the green light and reflects red light. So so you have to put that filter at an angle, and you have to take the red laser and aim it at exactly the same spot that the green laser is going through. And then you have to take the filter so that it will bounce the red light in combination with the green. So now you have a combination of red and green.
Mhm.
Then I have another filter that passes the red and green and reflects the blue. So the blue's got to go through the blue's got to get reflected, and it's got to reflect off the same spot. But then I have to steer that reflection so that the beams end up lined up. So I made 3D printed holders for the lasers that can adjust in right, left, up, and down directions. And then I made 3D printed holders for the filters that allow the filter to aim up, down, right, and left, and so that I can get all the beams combined. And so it took a lot of different parts, and I used threaded machine screws as the adjustments. And so the machine screws um, would I could very finely control the direction of the laser beam. Now in the past, I would have made that with copper and brass. Copper and brass are easy to cut and easy to machine and easy to drill and solder very nicely. You can solder it and make things very strong. So I would have made each part out of brass, probably mostly brass, and made it similarly. And I could have done a nice job with that, but it would have taken quite a while to make all those different parts. And so when I wanted to make holders for all these filters, I could make one, and then I just print more of them, and make one holder for a laser, and I just print more of them,
Yeah.
and so I could have all I needed. So I could have done it just as well without a 3D printer, but the 3D printer made it quite a bit easier, and allowed me to make it in a way that was maybe a little nicer, because I could have some slight bells and whistles and all that.
Absolutely. You know, another piece I'd love to hear a little bit more about is your floating castle in the clouds. I thought that was just so impressive. Tell us a little bit more about that one as well.
Well, I love magnets. I love magnets, and I found out it was possible to make a magnet float on a magnetic field. And I have seen where there's a magnet above and something held below it with a space, but this allows the magnet to be below and keep something balanced. So I thought, a castle in the clouds to be floating on a magnetic field. I mean, it just seemed like a no-brainer to me that that sounds pretty good, you know. And so I 3D printed the castle, and in several pieces, and I saw the Kalmar Castle in Sweden, which looked pretty good. I thought, okay, so I took some features of that, and I looked at some other castles and found some features of that. I could print the little turrets on the top, and the and print the castle itself, and then I could print I printed that all at ABS, but then I needed some clouds underneath it, and so I made the clouds out of CPE, a clear printable stuff. You know what it is, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put LED lights in it, and then I had to figure out how to make electrical power go across that 1-inch gap that the cloud is floating, and to be able to keep that floating. And I wound, I believe, 10 different coils to find the right way to get that power to go across, and I ended up printing 3D printing something to hold the coil on the bottom, where I had the wire going in a spiral, and it had to hold the wire at the right spacing to go in that spiral, and the 3D printer was perfect for that. I don't know how I would have done that without the 3D printer. I could print a nice little holder that kept all the wires lined up.
Yeah, that would not have been easy.
And then I could have the light, the power transfer across. Now I didn't 3D print all of it. There is, and outside the back door, there's a very tiny couple making out outside the back door, and that I cast in silver and then painted it, because I couldn't. The details are so small, I couldn't do that with my 3D printer.
Okay. So the rest of it was mostly 3D printed, aside from the couple.
Well, and there's a box made of wood underneath.
Yep. Okay.
And that's got the magnet in it, but I used a 3D printer to make a holder for the to hold the magnet assembly, and then 3D printed something to hold that coil that I have. But the box was made of wood, and I used on top, I wanted the smallest amount between the magnet and the castle, so the castle seemed to be floating. So I used a real thin piece of polycarbonate plastic, and then a thin veneer of wood over it. So the box looks like it's all wood, but the very top is very thin, but looks like wood. So I used wood, plastic, silver, 3D printing, and then of course some LEDs in there, because I love LEDs. There's LED lights in the windows of the castle and in the cloud. Blue lights in the clouds and yellow lights.
Very nice. Very nice.
Because I love light.
Just a reminder for our audience that you can head over to our blog, 3duniverse.org, where we already have this article that we wrote up on Vic's work, and you can see photos and the images of these projects we're talking about there. So head over to 3duniverse.org to see these projects.
Yeah. We got a question asking what your inspiration was for the musical laser rainbow thing. Can you tell us, was that just a random, you were eating a sandwich one day and decided to make it?
No, I love music. I just love music, and I love lights, and I love things like that. And in fact, I remember years ago, someone made a simple frequency filter and put in a big box some Christmas lights, some red, green, and blue, and made the red go to the bass notes, and the green, for instance, go to the mid range, and the blue to the high, or whatever. And I thought that was really cool. It wasn't cool enough, but I thought it was really cool. And so I thought, and also, if you've ever seen real laser light, and they've had laser light shows and stuff, lasers have got a really beautiful light. And you kind of have to see it in person, but it's not just a green or a red light. It's got this buzzing quality to it. I don't know how to describe it. That's really good. So I love lasers, and I've seen some lasers make really cool things. There is a restaurant in Las Vegas. It's got these laser patterns just kind of drift in clouds across the ceiling. And I thought, that is really cool. How did they make those patterns? So I love playing with lasers. So my love of music, my seeing things that filtered the music into, making music into lights, and then being able to play with lasers, I thought, and laser used to be really expensive, and now you can buy, you can buy a red laser for a buck, and you can buy
Yeah.
a nice blue laser for just a few dollars. I was playing with my blue laser and trying to get it focused, and I had a block of wood, and I'm working on focusing it, and then I start smelling something, and I'm burning a hole in the block of wood. But I got to play with lasers, and the lasers make this cool thing. And so combining lasers and light and music, those are just things I've always loved. And so just I could see the possibilities when and sometimes you find out that something is possible, and then you say, okay, I can do something with that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Besides being a dentist and an artist, you also enjoy making fireworks.
Yes, I do.
How are you using 3D printing to make fireworks?
Well, the kind of fireworks that I ended up doing a bit of is, and this is all legally done at a firework convention in Arizona by the Western Pyrotechnic Association, and they had 800 people attend the first one I went to. Quite a big deal, and we made fireworks, and I was making with my friend some shells where you have we were using 6-inch spheres. And you pack them with stars and burst powder, black powder. And so one way to do it is to take a Hemi, which is half of that shell, and line it with stars. And then you suspend a half sphere in the middle of that, which I use the 3D printer for. And then you can pack your burst powder over the stars that are already in there. And thanks to some tissue paper, you take the 3D printed half sphere out of there, and now you're left with an inner half sphere that you can pack more stars and more burst powder, so that when the fireworks blow up, you have a big outer sphere of one color or one kind of stars, and then an inner sphere of other kinds of stars. And there's pictures. This is the gadget I made with 3D printing, but it enables you to put layers of stars and have a much more complex shell. This is at a place where people make things that they might take all day making a shell, and it's gone in 20 seconds, but it's sure a great 20 seconds. And
That's right.
Everybody there loves fireworks, and I do too. Again, it's lights. I love lights and well, blowing things up. I mean, who doesn't like to blow things up? Well, maybe not everybody, but I thought it was very fun.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and I actually made one first out of wood, and I took it to the fireworks convention, and one of the teachers that was teaching how to make these classes, I got talking to him ahead of time, and I said, well, I want to make those. So I came up with this thing before even going to make them. I made this thing to hold this. I made it out of wood, and I brought it there, and he says, that's really cool. And he says, I've got a 3D printer. It might be nice to make that with a 3D printer. And I said, well, I got a 3D printer. I think that'd be great. So I made it out of that. And he said, that way we can share the design so that other people that go there, they can just print one out ahead of time, and then they can go there and they can make their own fancy shells with this 3D printed. And so I had to do a lot of woodworking for my original prototype. And this is just, once you got the design, you print it up and you got it ready to go, which is
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So Vic, as a fellow musician, one of your projects that caught my attention was a fretboard that you did for a guitar that has a bunch of LED lights on it. Can you talk to us about that one?
Yes. Well, the instrument's called a pedal steel guitar, and it is a horizontal. Almost nobody seems to know what it is, but if you hear the sound, you would recognize it. But it's got a horizontal set of strings, and you hold a bar on the strings with one hand and pick the strings with the other, and you sit at it, and then you have pedals that change the pitch of the string. So there's a fretboard underneath the strings that you're not actually touching that tells you where the frets are. And if you're super amazing, you might be able to do it without looking at it, but you use your ear to tell exactly where to press the bar, but you use your eyes to get you close. And so different instruments, they would print, instruments like to put markings on the frets, because if you have 24 frets in a row, it's really hard to tell which one is number 9. Well, you need a way to do this. They put designs on the fret. I also play the banjo, and the banjo likes to put fancy mother of pearl inlays on the neck to remind you where the frets are. There's always artwork in musical instruments, and the best musical instruments have a pile of artwork in them as well. So I decided I need, in my printed fretboard for my instrument had the suits of cards. It had spades, clubs, diamonds, and hearts on it. And I thought, that's vanilla. I want chocolate. I always like chocolate, So and I found I had this tool, and I like to play with lights, so I 3D printed the most of the neck out of black ABS, but it has channels in it for the frets, and I ran side emitting fiber optics into the channels so that the frets would be lit up, and then put a LED for each fret that had 3 colors, so that I could adjust the colors of each fret as I wanted. And then I put stars to mark the frets, and I printed the stars out of clear CPE, and they were and the fretboard had cutouts for the stars. I could make the cutout for the star and the star the exact same shape, so the stars would just glue right into place, that it was clear. And then I could put LEDs underneath that, and then I put white borders on the edge of the fretboard, because instruments like to put white borders at the edges of the fretboards, and it seemed cool. And then I could hide my electronics in there under a little cover of black ABS, so that it was kind of hidden and not detracting from the art of the fretboard.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of comments. I play in nightclubs and places like that, and sometimes it's kind of darkish, and the fretboard really pops. Some people would probably call it gaudy. Gaudy's one of my middle names. Gaudy's just fine. I like that, and and it looks cool. And some people say, that's a real modern one, is it? I've never seen one like that before. And I said, well, this is the only one.
Yes, indeed. One of our attendees shared a comment saying, I'm so impressed with your work and creativity. Thank you for sharing.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And the internet's so full of things. I freely steal ideas from other people, and sometimes just steal a little bit of one idea one place and another little idea for another place, and now all of a sudden you've got something that's your own, pretty much, because it differs by the time you've cobbled with it. But I don't mind just copying something either. I see something really cool, and and if it's fun to make and it comes out cool, I think I gave you a picture of my infinity cube, which somebody else made one and put it on Instructables, and I couldn't get it to print the way his was, so I had to make my own and print it. And I made what I thought were some little improvements, but then of course the programming to run the lights, I changed that all around and did my own way, because boy, you can really do something with lights there. So I'll freely steal from other people, and other people's ideas will inspire me to my own.
Yeah. Which parts of the Infinity Cube components were 3D printed?
Well, the whole cube itself is the base that supports it all. There's a little pedestal that's part of the base that goes up to hold the cube. All of the corners of the cube are 3D printed, and then there's a underneath the base there's a holds the microcontroller and the electrical parts, and that all, of course, 3D printed. It can all just fit together so smoothly. And then the cube has got some, so it's got a little bit of electronics, but most of it's 3D printed. And then it's got some one-way mirror, also called two-way mirror. I don't understand why both names apply to the same thing. And I got some of that and glued that in place, and then there's some lights in there, but the bulk of it is all 3D printed, and very fun, very satisfying project to make. And I got the idea from this other fellow, and he did a nice job. So on his Instructables, I built it, and then linked to where here's all my code for running the lights, and here's my thing, because he could print it all on one corner, and I found that the overhanging angles, my printer did not like having that much overhang, and it didn't come out pretty enough in my mind. And so I had to make it so they could print the base and the four sides coming up in one piece, and then another square that glues onto that. And thanks to 3D printing, you can print little pegs and holes so that everything all lines up, and it glues extremely well. So you can make things in a couple pieces, and they fit together very precisely, and you glue it, and now you got something that's in one piece and very strong in one piece, but you've combined several pieces to make it.
That's right. Yeah. I've heard that before, that where 3D printing starts to change how you think about designing what you're trying to create, because you know what the capabilities of the printer are or what its limitations might be. And so you figure out new ways to design around that, like what you've described.
Yeah, you have to make the materials bend to your will, one way or another.
That's right. So you obviously are a very creative and artistic person, and this is something that has been a lifelong pursuit. But how do you feel that 3D printing has enhanced your artistic abilities or your ability to create?
Well, I think it allows you to make things. I think it allows you to make things that are not possible to make very easily with regular materials. I just made a thing that straps onto some hair clippers that attaches onto your vacuum hose and pulls the hair into the clippers, and then a little comb spaces it out, and you can set it at different lengths and cut hair fairly evenly with that. But I had to have quite a fancy little gadget to hold on to. It's held on with rubber bands right now, but to hold on to this and pass the suction from right next to the blades, and then have that go in a flat tube widen out to a round tube that the vacuum attaches to. Without a 3D printer, I would have never thought of making that. There's no way I could make that. It wouldn't be possible in my mind, or maybe it would be possible. It would be really hard to do. And the 3D printer was rather easy to do.
Yeah. So it kind of, it frees you to kind of open up the scope of your thinking without.
Right.
Yeah.
You can make so many different things.
Yeah. So how about being, coming from the dentistry profession, have you ever used 3D printing in dentistry or thought about doing so?
Well, it's coming into dentistry, and they're already doing some in dentistry. And my son, who practices with me, sees that potential very well. And for instance, one thing is making a guide when you're placing implants. You have to use some special X-rays to decide exactly where the implants are going to be, and sometimes you can pull the tissue away, see the bone, and you can see where to drill the hole for the implant. But sometimes it's not. There's structures underneath, so you do this careful X-ray to find out exactly where it is, and then you can make a 3D printed guide that fits in their mouth, and it's got a hole that the drill goes through that puts that drill exactly where you want it to be, and misses vital nerves, blood vessels, other teeth, and guides it exactly. So the potential is great there.
Yeah.
They're making 3D printed dentures now, although the smoothness of the surface is not what real dentures are, and the teeth, normal denture teeth have layers of different translucency to make the teeth look like real teeth, and so you could not just 3D print something in one color. Um, it would look like chiclets. The way to really insult the dentist is say that his crowns or his dentures look like chiclets. That's the ultimate insult, where they all the same color, no translucency. But 3D, we're talking dot matrix printer versus others. It might be quite possible to print 3D printing with different layers of translucency and get a smoothness that the SLA printers get a real nice smoothness, but you can't do the different colors in it like you can with the FDM printers.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it's coming to dentistry, and it's come little ways already. You know, my light that I use to shine on the people's teeth, I put a mirror that I can flip down and show people things, but the mirror counterbalances the springs, and it made the thing too heavy, and then the thing would not stay up. So I took one handle off that's made of aluminum, and I printed it out of some silver PLA I had, and it looks almost like the aluminum one. And now I have a light that matches the one on the other side pretty close, but it weighs so much less, it made my light work better. So I've used it at other crazy things, you know.
Yeah.
But it's coming in dentistry in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What do you think you would have made if you had been able to have a 3D printer when you were younger?
Boy, I don't know. If I would have had those possibilities when I was younger, the one I have has opened my imagination to things that I made things that I would have never have thought of making. So I think if I was younger, I had it. That's why I think putting these things in schools, every kid ought to have a chance to put his hands on a 3D printer.
Yeah.
And they say there's not enough kids in STEM now, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Is that right? Well, and throw an A in there for art, so it's STEAM. If every kid had a chance to put his hands on that, I think it would inspire them to go into fields that they may not think of otherwise. And just like I took metal shop and wood shop in 7th grade and 8th grade, and they've taken that kind of stuff out of school, and that's just a pity. It's just a pity that kids can't learn. And I teach Boy Scouts some things too. I teach metalworking merit badge, among other things, to Boy Scouts, and I got kids that have never put their hands on a file or some sandpaper or those things. And so if you could give them a 3D printer and let them play with that at school, their parents may not be able to have one, but have them play with that at school, I think it would open up possibilities and bring us creative people into the workforce later, because they get inspired by that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We try to get as many 3D printers into schools as possible to get kids inspired and give them an opportunity to work with things that they might have never experienced before and didn't know they had a talent for. It's really important. Do you have any new projects you're working on, or anything you've just finished up, or anything?
Well, I just made this thing that attaches onto the hair clippers, and I've made little things, you know. I don't have any great big things on the horizon, but I don't know, you know. Sometimes I don't have a project, and then all of a sudden I do, you know. I just comes to me, and I think about it, and thank you for calling me creative, but I don't really feel all that creative. I just make stuff, and I see stuff, and I copy stuff, and I change it around, and it's just because I like to make stuff. It doesn't have to be, you know, I'm not sure I've invented anything. I just play with what turns me on, and that's fun to do.
Yeah.
And some of the other things I've made that are not 3D printed have taken quite a lot of time, and I've gotten comments on some of my things. People say, "You must have a lot of time." And I say, well, actually, I've got a job, and I teach Boy Scouts, and I play in a band, and but I don't watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
And they all go, oh,
That'll do it.
they understand, you know.
That'll do it.
And I nothing the matter with TV. I can watch TV, but boy, if you can play with making something, that's big fun to me. So it won't be long. I'll be making something else. Now my laser rainbow machine, that was pretty cool, and that took a lot of work. These great big projects, I hope they don't come too often because I get obsessed, and it takes sometimes quite a long time.
Yeah.
I have a musical water fountain that is microcontrollers, and it's got about 70 or so valves, and it's got all these little creatures that are playing musical instruments and squirting the water out of their instruments. And I've got a little bee sitting on a flower, and the bee flies above the flower playing a saxophone, squirting water out of his saxophone as he's flying, and then a turtle squirts the bee and he lands back on the flower.
Wow.
A lot of time in making those things.
Yes.
That is awesome.
So I have a rolling ball sculpture you might have seen, where balls roll down tracks, and this one's got little golfers, and little tiny golfers swing their club and hit the ball onto the track. One goes down the track and lands on the green, but it misses the hole, but a gopher pops up out of the ground and knocks the ball into the hole. Well, and you're asking if I sold anything. I had a bunch of things on display at the state fair. I've had a bunch of things one at a time, and the state fair finally called and said, we want you to bring everything down. And so someone said, how about if I buy that golfing machine you got? And what would you charge for that? And I said, well, I thought, well, okay, maybe I'd sell it. I could make another one. But I gave them a price, and they go, oh yeah, okay, well, no, we're not going to buy it. And I said, well, I got maybe 300 hours in this. And should I get minimum wage? I don't think so.
Absolutely.
But 3D printing, some of that stuff is very carefully machined. These little golfers have got some careful machining in it. A 3D printer might have enabled me to make. I know, to be honest, it's really cool having it made out of brass, but a 3D printer, I could have made some of those parts much more simply, and where for somebody else to duplicate my work in brass would be, it takes some machine tools and everything else, but with a 3D printer, it just takes a 3D printer and there you got it, So it could simplify something.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Yeah, very cool projects. So this is something that you got to see. It's one thing to talk about it, but I encourage the people listening and watching the video recording here to go and check out your work online so they can see the photos. You can check our blog, 3duniverse.org, as I mentioned. Just search for Vic Chaney there. And your website is chaneyproductions.com. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
chaneyproductions.com. And I have videos, links to videos on YouTube of most of the things we've talked about.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, keep churning these great ideas out. It's really inspirational to see all the things you've come up with, and that's what we love to see. Just inspiring people to let them know what you can do with 3D printers and how you can bring these crazy ideas to life. So keep at it.
These are wonderful machines, aren't they? I love it.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you with us, Vic. It's been a real great discussion. Appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience for joining in. As I mentioned, you can always check out our blog, 3duniverse.org. Click on 3D Universe Untethered in the upper left to go to a page with all of our recordings and upcoming episodes for this series. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. Bye-bye.
Bye.